toner. So they're working on that. All right, what I want to do is this is our second budget workshop, as we talked about a few months ago. We did the first one on March 23rd. This is the second one, which is basically an update to the numbers that we presented in March, both from the revenue and expenditure side. So this is more of a high-level view. And after this workshop, unless there's a desire by council to continue to have more workshops, the next document you'll see will be on May 9th, which will be the thick book that you're pretty familiar with. In fact, we're working on the book as we speak. So we'll just go ahead and run through. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop me and ask. If I can't answer the question, I got talented people behind me who certainly can. And I think the mayor is going to ask Captain Hunky at the conclusion of my presentation whether he wanted to add a few comments concerning their particular request. Okay, so let's go. Again, just to remind you, the town's budget consists of 4 different accounts. The general fund, which is the day-to-day operation, POW bill, which we've talked about ad nauseum, which is transportation, stormwater, and then debt service and capital reserve. Keep in mind of your 18.5-cent property tax rate that you get, 5 cents comes off the top and it goes into the debt service capital reserve. We use that to pay our debt service, which is about $1.9 million a year, and we bank the rest of it so that when we have projects, we can fund it with cash. As we look at the budget, we have got some things that aren't in there that we're going to need to get your guidance on as to whether you want us to look at how we want to fund that. One would be the street lighting on Highway 74. Just to remind you, you wanted us to go back and look at both options, one which was the selected intersections and one along 74 for the entire length of town. Duke has had to go back and redo the design work. We have not gotten those prices yet. Also, the enhanced Christmas lights, I'll talk about that, whether we want to use a company to handle that, much like we did with our Christmas tree. Some of the capital projects I'll talk about. We've got 13,000 feet of sidewalk that we've identified that we want to do, but we haven't made any progress on that. We want to see if you've got an appetite for that. And then some other items. Most importantly, we want to hear any comments, questions, or suggestions from the council. You see the chart back here. We've talked about this. It is scheduled to be presented in 2 weeks. We do have a public hearing scheduled at your second meeting in May, and then the budget adoption June 13th. June 13th deadline is pretty important. Even though the statute says we have to approve the budget by June 30th, we need some time on our end to update our systems back in finance. So the earlier in June that we can approve this budget, the better it works for our staff. So you see that. I've already mentioned that. We made some changes this year in the budget with how we account for POW bill funds and how we account for public works funds. I can go back over that if you need that done. We will continue even beyond tonight until we get closer to May 9th to look at the numbers, and if we need to do some tweaking, we will. We are basing this budget based on the 4 bullets that you see there, the most important being the council approved priorities back in 2021. Again, I'll recommend that next January you need to sit down and have a good budget retreat where you go back and revisit that, see if there are some things you want to take off the list and add on. Organizational succession, trying to prepare for the next generation. Department needs, and then continuing the town projects. You see the priorities here. I think everybody's familiar with those. As we walk through this budget, I will point out things that I think you would agree, meets those priorities. So what's been the big change? Well, first of all, the county tax base has gone up. We estimated 3%. We got word that it actually went up 4.81%. So the original general fund numbers we presented to you back in March was $21,462,871. The new number is now $21,692,223, a difference of $229,000 and $229,352. We budget our revenue very conservatively on 96%, typically collect 99%. I have 2-3 hardworking folks down in tax office every day that tries to make sure the people pay their taxes, and people in this town do pay their taxes. In the event that anyone has trouble paying their taxes, we encourage them to come in and we set up payment plans and things like that. The debt service, you see that changed by $53,000. I think that is where we take the nickel that I told you about earlier and it transfers over. That policy that was developed by council several years ago, I think, was a very wise policy. It took money off the top and it planned for future projects that it wants to handle. So 18.5 cent property tax rates, what the manager's recommending. All other fees stay the same. And when I say other fees, as part of your budget that you approve every year, you also approve a fee structure. And that fee structure includes things like site plans, reviews, and things like that, primarily planning-related fees. We left those the same. Those have been the same for a long, long time. You see the POW bill, you see the stormwater, and you see the debt service. Anticipating $2.9 million in revenue for debt service, expenditure of $1.9, leaves you a balance of $1,024,000. We talked about personnel at the last meeting. The only change that has been made since that time is a request by the by the Public Works Department that we move that park maintenance technician that I talked about last time, starting in January. We would recommend they start in July, because the work that they do is they help turn these fields around and turn the parks around, and as our rentals increase in frequency, we need to be able to turn those around much more rapidly. That cost is roughly a $25,000 cost, moving it up 6 months. However, since we're no longer taking over Fred Kirby Park or managing Fred Kirby Park, there was a $42,000 piece of equipment that we had put in the budget in anticipation of taking that park or managing that park. We no longer are requesting that, so that's an $8,000 surplus, positive impact to the budget. This chart's a little bit hard to read. I will hit some of the highlights of that. You see where the ad valorem, we're looking at an additional $196,000. We did talk to Jeff Sullivan over at the ABC, and we have scaled down the ABC revenue. The unrestricted intergovernmental funds, if you want me to break that down, I can have Jim do that, and then some of the other financing. Let's come over to the expenditures. Initially, when we were doing the budget, we had projected $4,100,441 for law enforcement, which is the sheriff's office contract. We are paying for that with ARPA dollars, aka Washington dollars. We've talked about that. Based on my recommendation, we're going to need another $8,600, so I made that adjustment. So the recommended amount is now $4,109,125. And I'll get into some more detail on that. Public Works, you see an increase of 48, and in light of what I said a while ago, it may sound a little bit contradicting, so let me break that down for you. We have, for the last couple years, as part of our partnership with Union County, participated in the Urban Forester Program. If you were at the mayor's tree planting over the last couple of days, you may have seen him. He was at our meetings a couple of times, and he assists residents, and he provides us information on the importance of trees. Their contract went up from $10,000 to $19,000. They are also providing us GIS information on tree coverage in the town. He and I have talked about working in some of the neighborhoods to try to address some of the tree issues, so if you want to continue that program. Item number 2, I've already talked about with the park maintenance technician. Item 3 is a matter we haven't talked about. Because of the size of the town and our staff, we need to do an ADA compliance study. That does not include implementation. That is a cost over 2 years, $12,000 this year and $12,000 in next year's budget. We fall, as I understand, under Title VI of the federal code, and this study would look at everything in the town that the town controls as far as sidewalks, buildings, et cetera, for ADA compliance. In the event that we get, as I understand, in the event that we get a complaint and we're found in violation, then we're subject to a fine. And so this is a pretty extensive study that will take a while to accomplish. Once we get the study, which I think will be not this coming year, but the following year, then we start to look at implementation. And then item 4 I've already talked about. Community and economic development, you see that. We brought that up at the last meeting. Just below that, you see operating capital public works. Adam will talk about electric charging stations tonight. We talked about the grant. And when we did the grant, we told you at the time that we put in contingencies, but CARPO, given the type of program it was, they added another 30% contingency. So that 30% brought it up to $117,000. We don't think we will use that entire amount of money, but we wanted to go ahead and put it in the budget. That contract will not come around until next October because it is a federal grant. You see a summary of the revenue sources. All right, let's talk about public safety. The recommended funding back on March 23rd was $4.1 million. We've upped that another $9,000. As you recall, our agreement with the county is that based on the number of personnel, the county pays 10% and we pay 90%. And so we get billed for every deputy, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, investigator, et cetera. What we recommended we do this year, and we've had several conversations with the county staff on this, is you've got 2 traffic officers that the grant is expiring on October 1st. If they're not picked up, the sheriff will move them somewhere else. Those 2 grant officers are assigned to traffic duties. And you've seen some of those reports, or you have heard some of those reports. I'm recommending we pick those up, okay? And I would recommend that we add another deputy effective July 1st. What I would also recommend, I think this is very important, is last year we put in a CSI. CSI stands for Crime Scene Investigator. The crime scene investigator is billed higher than a regular deputy. And typically in most law enforcement agencies, a crime scene investigator serves out of a central bureau. And so what I would recommend that we do in order to fund this additional deputy starting on July 1st, that we ask the county to pick up the cost of the crime scene investigator, that they pay for that, and we'll pay for the deputy. We'll pick up the other 2 deputies. I think Captain Hunky in a few minutes will make a request for more than that, but in transparency, I did want to tell you that. Now, how did I come to that? I said just a few moments ago that in our contract with the county, we pay 90, county pays 10, and kind of the thinking is that Indian Trail Division deputies would handle 90% of their calls inside the town limits. I have worked with the captain, and we've looked at some statistics, and right now we're at about 80. The latest information, being 2022, is that Indian Trail deputies handled 87% of their calls. So we're getting close to that benchmark. And so what I would recommend, we look at that, and then when we come around next spring, let's see where we are with the workload. I can spend all day on this, but I'm just going to hit some of the high points of this. You've seen this chart several times. These are our capital improvement projects we have. Some of the money, and you see where the sources are coming from. Some of it is state funding. Indian Trail Road, Phase 1 is our largest project right now, and that is money from developers. It is town money, it is federal money, it is state money. Indian Trail Road, Phase 1 covers from Liberty Lane to Gribble Road. And so on that particular project, we're going to have to pay the cost up front, and then we get our reimbursement a year or so down the road. Think about the roundabout that we did shortly after I got here. And so we've got to have cash flow to make that happen. The other project that we have is the Highway 74 multi-use path greenway. That is a greenway that runs from Biscuitville all the way to Crooked Creek Park, which is about 3 miles. And so that's another one that we have to pay for up front and then get our reimbursement. Shady Bluff, we're using some of the money that the General Assembly has provided us for that, and we'll give you regular reports on that. Chestnut Parkway, Phase 1 and Phase 3. Keep in mind this is something we're working with the state, which gives folks another way through town. You also, several months ago, approved to pay for a temporary intersection once it gets to Old Monroe Road, so that once the road's built, people can actually get out on Monroe Road. Originally, the state was proposing to have the road just basically dead end with no intersection. When Old Monroe Road widening occurs, then they will build that intersection out. Navajo Extension runs beside the pharmacy, and we have designed it to be a connecting street, but right now we're not planning on connecting it. We're going to get pretty darn close, but we're not going to make the connection until some point in the future. Indian Trail Road, Complete Street, Phase 2 is from Liberty Lane to 74, Gribble to Old Monroe Road. We're in the early stages of that. They're doing the survey, they're doing the design work, and once we get those prices, we'll bring that back to you, and then we will adjust the cost accordingly. Some of these projects, such as Navajo Extension, Indian Trail Complete Street Phase 2, we don't know the complete cost just yet. Public Works, we've talked about that. Council made a 3-year commitment to put money aside, I think $2 million a year for that facility. We're still working with the state. I think we're making some positive headway with them to acquire land that we have talked about. And once we get into that, then when we start the design cost, we'll have a better feel for what that facility will cost. Are there any questions on that? Okay. All right, so this is kind of a summary here. The previous slide that you saw breaks it down by the various steps from design to right-of-way to construction, et cetera, and the anticipated sources of revenue. This gives the bigger picture view of what's funded. So right now you got roughly almost $36 million worth of capital projects that you've got funded that's underway. Unfunded, Indian Trail Road, Complete Street Phase 2, I've already talked about. Public Works facility, we think it will probably exceed $6.5 million. We just don't know yet, but we've got that listed here. Sidewalk connectivity, I've touched on a little while ago. You see some of the connections that have been identified. The overall cost is estimated at $3 million. If you put a 10% contingency on there, the overall cost would be about $3.3 million. Right now, that is not funded, at all. But that's just kind of a menu if you feel like you want to pick some of that up. So then we take the sidewalk information that I just gave you, we look at the Public Works facility, we look at Indian Trail Complete Street Phase 2, and you get about $12.5 million. Debt service, I mentioned at the very start of this, we pay out $1.9 million a year. Several things we have recently paid off. That's the administrative services building installment loan, Chestnut Park installment loan, Crooked Creek installment loan. And the way we paid Chestnut Square Park installment loan, we paid it off 3 years early using some of the right-of-way proceeds from the Chestnut Parkway. A lot of chestnuts in this presentation. I will also remind you that when we sold the street bonds about a year ago, we were running against a deadline that had we not sold them, we would not have been authorized. And we hit the market right at the right time with our AAA rating. We got the bottom of the interest rate. So we did a 3-point play on that. The park bonds have already been sold, and we're earning interest on that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
If we can go back to the previous slide, please.
Yes, sir.
We look at the Public Works facility, we say that total cost estimated right now is about 6.5, right?
That's what we got budgeted, but we don't think that's enough.
Yeah, agreed. But we say the total unfunded projects is 12.5, right?
Yes, sir.
But we have 2.5 million sitting
Correct.
in a budget. We
Right.
had an amendment. So shouldn't we really put that down to 4 million? Or have a, because the thing is, it's kind of not, I want to be careful with my words so that way it doesn't sound negative, but it's kind of misleading in that we have
Okay.
set a target of 6.5, we have 2.5 available. So really and truly, our target should be 4 million. With inflation, future cost of projects, materials, and so forth, it may cost 8, 9 million. But the thing is, it would be a good representation to let the public, the general public themselves know that we, as the council and the town staff, with the manager's discretion or direction, we've been putting money away to get to that goal, so that way we don't have to take a loan.
Good point. We can make that adjustment.
All right.
Okay? Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
question. I'm just curious, I know you sold the bonds at the best time compared to when you bought them, as compared if you were to go out and sell those bonds today. How much have we saved as far as income from the, well, it would be expense. How much have we saved if we had waited until today to sell those bonds?
My finance director, Jim Waddle, would be more than happy to try to take a guess at your question.
I'd have to get that for you, Dennis, but it's a significant number.
What'd you say?
1.5, it's over 5 now.
Okay, so 3.5%?
It's in that ballpark.
Yeah, and how much what's the total cost of the bonds? 10 million?
6.
6 million, okay. Yeah, that's substantial.
Yeah, we timed it just right, and then when the interest rate started to go up, the idle funds, have benefited us. Yes, sir.
One more.
Marcus, go ahead, but let me ask too, that if a question can be asked at the very end, we can ask it at the end, but if it's pertaining to this now, go ahead.
It is. Actually, go to the next slide, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine.
The thing is, I agree with what you say, but sometimes I have them for that specific slide. And it's just a request. Good job on paying off these things early, right? The debt service, is 1.19 or 1.9, sorry. Is there when you can, doesn't have to be now, to earliest convenience, can we get the expiration of these, when these are
Yes, sir.
expected to? be
Yes,
done?
sir.
Thank you. That's all.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. At the last meeting, we talked about ARPA and surplus. We talked about 2 projects. The committee went back and came up with a recommendation for you to consider. Now, when I sent you the PowerPoint earlier this afternoon, I had a cover memo and I talked about the changes. One of the changes I forgot to mention was we initially estimated 2.4 million available in FY24 and 2.4 available in FY25. It's actually 2 million FY24 and 2 million FY25. That does not include any interest earned. What we want to do is throw this out, see if there's interest in the board pursuing this for the surplus revenue. Keep in mind that what we're using the ARPA money, or what I call the Washington money, for is the sheriff's office contract and making the second of 2 payments on the fire trucks, which will occur in the upcoming fiscal year. But to use money to cover the community and senior center, if the council chooses to move forward, that ties into infrastructure, parks and community amenities and partnerships. But also, and this is something we're really excited about, trying to use the interest income from those funds to go to the outside agencies. You know, y'all have done a good job in the first year of feeding people and providing a lot of community needs, and y'all have gotten a lot of credit for it, as you should. But for the upcoming year, try to use that interest rate to put that back into the community. Several years ago, we changed and we went and worked with installing the holidays and got a Christmas tree. And I think the first year we were about 20 feet. Next year we got it to 24. We're now about 28 feet. And counting the star on top, it's about a 32-foot tree. And the company comes out. Mr. World was out here a couple years ago when former Mayor Alvarez couldn't be here. And you see the crowd there. And the company comes out and they install the tree. They take care of the tree. If there's a problem with the tree, they come and fix it, whatever fix it is. But also what we do in the park, as you know, is our park and rec, our public works folks, it takes them about a total of 20 days to come out to the park and put up lights. We put them along the fence, we put them along the buildings, and we use the Lowe's lights, just like you would buy at your house. And those aren't very good lights. We have to replace them. But the thing we run into is the time that it takes to put them up, take them down. And while we're doing that, there's other work that's not being done and just the maintenance of the lights. So we started talking about it, and we talked about installing the holidays. And I know that several of you have talked to me about, we want to see more lights in the park, and we agree. But what does that look like? And so we talked to installing the holidays to see if they could provide us some slides. This was not planned. Okay, keep going down. So anyway, the labor cost, Adam estimated the labor cost for our staff to do the lights each year is about $20,000 when you take the crew and you multiply it by 10 days plus $2,500 in lights. We don't have the storage. We do have frequent maintenance and replacement. I've told you about the tree. That seems to be working out very well. And so we reached out to various vendors and installing the holidays. They do a lot of work in this area. They were the only ones that responded. And they would propose a 3-year agreement that would handle the entire lighting program. This is what they came up with. We could always look and either add or take away from. It depends on what the appetite of the council is. And I'll talk about the first 3 years, and then I'll talk about moving outside of that range. You've got rooftop lights on all the buildings. You've got the tree lighting. You've got big walk-through ornaments, and you've got lighting along the fence. The tree we've already talked about. We've had it in the budget for the last several years. So it would roughly be total package of about $44,000 a year. If there is appetite by the council, we can come back with a more formal presentation for you. We would probably need to get some direction fairly soon because they need to order stuff early and they line their customers up early. We would shoot for sometime in November, get them to install, and then take them down sometime in December. Now, what happens after 3 years? It's certainly my hope that after 3 years that we will be pretty far along Indian Trail Road, particularly Phase 1. And as some of you have told me, you wanted to see Christmas lights down Indian Trail Road. And so probably in year 2 or year 3, depending on where we are with that road, we can start to look at actually having a downtown with some Christmas lights. The other thing I want to talk to you about is, if you remember last June, I think it was June 28th or some date like that, we brought to the council a report from Land Design where we looked at other park opportunities that you might want to consider. And because we were in negotiations or looking at Fred Kirby, we kind of put that to the side. I wanted to see if the council has any appetite of at least having us look towards doing some more proposed park opportunities. The opportunities we have is Fairview Park, which is over off First Avenue. Old Monroe and Chestnut, we sold the state some land, but we got a little piece right there for a very small pocket park, if we will. Old Monroe Road, we've talked about that before, which is a total of about 11 acres. And then Holly Park, phases 1 and 2. You know, if there's any interest in having us start to pursue one of those, we could discuss that and put together a proposal for y'all to consider. I've already mentioned the street lights. We have not put the $100,000 in the budget yet because we don't know the price. But it is an estimated $100,000. We can certainly add that if you feel confident that you want to move forward in that direction. Budget is balanced. Fee structure remains the same. You see the 4 funds there. Minimal personnel adjustment. We've talked about it. 1 starting July, 2 starting January. 3 positions were not funded. 5% COLA for staff and council, adjusted family coverage from 45 to 50. All other benefits remain the same. The budget that you have before you continues on the capital projects. The stormwater, once we get the watershed study done this summer, it will give us specific projects in which we can begin to work on under the leadership of Mr. Hunsinger. We'll continue to focus on what you've said you wanted to do as far as maintaining the roads. We've budgeted $3.15 million. Now, if you go back in your mind, what we've talked about before was for the first year or so, what we're going to do is we're going to use Powell bill fund balance, and some general funds that we're going to, over the next couple of years, spend down that Powell bill fund balance on those roads. And then in years 4 and 5, we'll move from that. We will also do a new pavement condition study in year 3 to see where we are. And we've talked about a overall average street goal in the town of a score of 80. When we started this, we're at 63. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got funds in there for an ADA compliance study, paying half this year and half next year. We provided a recommendation for you on your surplus revenue. We also got money in there to do some facility maintenance and security enhancements. Adam and I have had a number of conversations about beefing up security in this building, particularly on our pay windows at the tax office and the planning office. The building was not designed like that, so we have to do quite a bit of work in that area. We are also upgrading our cameras. Our cameras are currently 5 years old, and the quality is not what it used to be, and so we're upgrading that. The potential add-ons I've already talked about, street lights along 74 and enhanced Christmas lights. And that's my presentation. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, go ahead.
I guess we're going down the list. You know, for the decorations at Christmas time, I do believe we need to include Town Hall. You know, last year, Town Hall, I think it might have been in private offices, they may have had some decorations up. But I imagine a Christmas tree in the foyer here, you know, a tall one, and then wreaths about and outside, perhaps lighting it up. I mean, if we're gonna spend that much money on Chestnut Park, I do believe that, you know, we could probably afford something with Town Hall, because Town Hall needs to be decorated, I believe.
I agree, and thank you for that suggestion.
Marcus?
Is it included in that light and enhancement? Is Town Hall included? When you talk
No.
about buildings, you're just talking about the park?
Just talking about the park.
All right. I have a question, Mr. Mayor. I have actually two questions. Following up on that, this Christmas enhancement is not in the budget right now, the 44,000 per year.
We have the 12 of the 44 in there for the tree.
Okay, good. All right. So you're asking for an additional 30-something. All right. Then second question deals with Indian Trail Complete Street Phase 2.
Yes, sir.
There is about, I think, $720,000 for design.
Something
Yeah,
like that.
something of that magnitude, right? The design is going to give us a total cost, right, to do Liberty to 74
Right.
and Gribble to Old Monroe, right?
Right. And I could ask Todd to come up and give you some more detail on that if you would like to.
Well,
have
I
that.
was just asking, the reason for the design is to get the total cost of these two pieces,
Correct.
right?
Right.
Any idea when this design will be complete?
Todd, do you know? Okay. While he's thinking, one thing, and I think this is important to mention, is under Phase 1, we're proposing to bury the utilities,
Yeah.
but not in Phase 2.
Yeah. He can tell me another time if he,
Well, I mean, you know, obviously it's broken down into percentages, you get 25, 60. 25% probably done to probably by end of June, and then you're probably 60% done, fall. So we're probably gonna fly by the end of the calendar year.
all right. That's all I have.
You got?
Yes, sir.
I still have some more.
Okay, Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I'm going back looking, the $100,000 budgeted for streetlights, that was like almost $1 million over 10 years with a basic fee up front of $274,000 when we last looked, I think. So, but we're only saying $100,000 right now?
Adam McLam can answer that question.
So $100,000 is what they told us it would be per year. When y'all multiply that out over the 10-year agreement is where we were coming up with that $1 million time, that $1 million figure. We don't have an updated cost from Duke Power at this point, whether it's to do one intersection, two intersections, 4, or the whole length. We don't have an updated cost yet.
The other question was on law enforcement, which I know Captain Hunky's going to get that, but I know that when we added officers for this year, I had talked to Captain James prior to the year, and one of them that he asked for was a detective. Is this the one that you're talking about, the crime investigator, or?
No, sir.
Okay.
No.
So we had a crime
He-
investigator here in addition to a detective?
Yeah, I think right now you're you've got a CSI, okay? You have detectives. One thing we did do this year was we provided Captain Hunky, we did have 5 sergeants, we now have 4 and 2 lieutenants, and the county picked up that 3 months of additional cost. And they've also picked up the cost of the traffic officers. They never billed us for that.
Okay. So did we have a crime investigator prior to the detective coming in, or?
I think the CSI, as I understand, was added last year. But before, I guess it worked out of Wingate, out of their headquarters.
Captain Hunky, you want to answer that? I mean, because I'm thinking we had a detective, we added one, but go ahead.
We had a detective and a crime scene investigator last year.
Okay.
So you got 2, basically.
Sure, you're done, Dennis? Okay. Tom, let me let Tom go.
While we're on the subject, basically, it looks like we're just flat, then we're not adding anything to safety this year, because we already have the 2 grant deputies, and then we have the traffic one, but we're losing the CSI.
You're adding 1 law enforcement position. The CSI is a civilian
Right, I
position.
understand that, but it's still part of their staff, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And then also, something different, on the EV chargers, we assume that, how do we know that it's not going to exceed the $100,000 that council directed?
Okay, I can speak to that. I'm going to let Adam speak to that, because he can tell you what we've done behind the scenes on that, and he'll also give you a report during your business meeting.
That would be my question. If I give it now, I'm gonna give what we're gonna talk about.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you can answer it later, I've just had that
Okay.
question. What we were talking about, this is comments
Okay.
and questions, I thought I would ask that.
Okay.
And why are we not answering that? Why?
He's got
I
it in
didn't hear
his-
what Adam said.
He's got it in his spiel.
We've got it tonight at the business meeting to
Oh,
talk
okay.
about.
I didn't hear you.
And then, one more thing, well, 2 more things, actually. So our payroll for our town, government is 5.723.
Jim?
Is that how much we pay our, everything for the staff?
Payroll for the town,
Yeah, it's 5.7.
what's your number, Tom?
I got 5.722933.
Total payroll for the town is a little.
It says,
million.
expenditures, general government, that's with council government
It's a
body.
combination of a couple of categories.
Oh, okay. I thought that was payroll. I said, man, we're paying good. I wouldn't want to go nowhere. I want to stay. Thank you.
So if we don't fund the CSI position, does that mean they won't be assigned to Indian Trail anymore?
Correct.
So we lose it?
Correct.
Okay.
They work out of Wingate. If you do decide to fund it, I think we would add $129,000 and some change to that.
Do we have a business development position budgeted in this?
Not after July 1st, no, sir. We're going to fund that.
Okay, you said- you
We're
said-
going to direct that through the planning department.
So, and what do we have budgeted for economic incentives?
Right now, we have proposed to have 100,000 total.
Because there was a 146,000 figure there, and I didn't know if that was the same thing or if that was something different.
Now, let's go back to that slide if you'd like. What, if we get an inquiry on economic development, we will forward it through the planning department. Right here. See where it says community and economic development? Initially, we had recommended 75,000 for incentives, okay? At the last meeting, I think the consensus of the council was adjust that up to 100,000. Now, one of the things we need to do is we need to develop an economic incentive policy, because right now we don't have one, so that we tie that money into some sort of, whether it's jobs or whatever. We have done one economic incentive project since I've been here, and that's where we partnered with the EDC, Indian Trail Town Center, to help fund that water line that runs on Indian Trail Road.
Okay, and On the family coverage and where you're increasing it,
Yes, sir.
before it said dependent coverage, now it says family. Are we covering just dependents, or is this the husband and everybody?
It's family and spouses.
I got no hope. of
Okay,
hearing.
family and spouses.
So it includes the spouse.
Okay.
So we're paying half their insurance premiums? Is
For
what you want?
family and spouses, we've been at 45%. The goal of the council, I understand from years past, was
'Cause I thought it
at
was just
50.
dependents. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you want to, we're discussing ARPA funding, surplus funding now, or are we going to, it looks like that's on the agenda. We're going to discuss that later tonight.
What we're going to do tonight is just give you, at the business meeting, just give you an ARPA update. What we wanted to do in this presentation is to just get your initial take as to whether this is something you would like us to pursue next year. And we can come back and, look at it later. We don't have to decide tonight, but just try to get some sort of direction of,
So we'll discuss it later. Okay. that's
okay,
fine.
good?
Well, just one more thing and I'm done. In the planning department, that position, economic development person, will that be their sole job?
It's not a position, it's just money set aside for economic incentives.
Oh, I thought that there was a directive from council to hire a person last year. And then, now we're moving it to the planning department. We're just putting those
Okay.
funds in the planning
Okay.
department.
What we're doing is, Commissioner Ambergy, is we've advertised and didn't find a really good candidate, quite frankly. I mean, we found some. But given where we are right now, my recommendation is that we not fund that position, that body, but instead let the planning department handle any economic development that comes to the town. And a lot of times, the planning department is kind of the go-to department in a lot of towns. And also in North Carolina, you have the county economic development, which is the Monroe Union County that handles the big projects. So what we did was, instead of filling that position with a body, we're recommending we don't recruit for that position, but let Brandy and her staff handle that. We also put some money aside for economic incentives, so that if a project does come that they need some sort of economic incentive that the council agrees to, then we've got some money set aside to handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I thought it was, sure, go ahead. Go right ahead. We've got plenty of time.
Back to the Christmas lights.
Yes, sir.
Now, basically, if we want a contract, you're basically doing that because we're going to be adding. But if we not adding, then we don't need a contract. So I want to kind of get clear on that.
And that's a good question. We are contracting because we want to add lights, both lights and the quality of lights. The lights that they produce are better, no offense against Lowe's, than the lights you get at Lowe's or Walmart or any other big box store. And the other reason we want to contract is so that frees Adams folks up to continue to do work. Now, we didn't put any photos in this thing, but if you go back and you look at, let me run back here and find it. You had, right here, you see the walk-through ornaments? I don't know if y'all have ever seen that, but it's this big, huge display. And so that's some other stuff that adds to the Christmas experience that we currently don't have. And so I think and I think your comment, Councilmember Ambergy, was on target, and we talked about it last year about trying to spruce up Town Hall. We can certainly do that. We can certainly ask them to put an ad on for Town Hall as to a tree or lights or wreath. What the folks did last year was each department kind of passed the hat and decorated their own door, made it a contest, and we can come back with an updated cost on that, see if y'all want to go with it.
Very good. Just to get off, or to go to that question that Todd asked, one of the things I think you stated is there was like 20 days to do that, 10 days to put them on, 10 days to take them off. And I know how much it would cost somebody else if they were doing their job. For instance, we used, we had some work done over at the ABC store, and I was amazed at how much it cost. The town charged us. I'm like, my gosh, there's a whole bunch of money to do that. So if you're paying, you're basically, it's almost, I look at it as almost a even, because if we had to pay somebody to do the work that they're doing at the park, then you're not, plus you might as well get the way I look at it, a professional to do it. And make it look nice. And like you say, the Lowe's lights, and nothing wrong, I have Lowe's lights on my house, but I don't have it, you know, in the. I agree. I agree, and I think I mentioned too is someday I hope to think that once we get the complete street going up there, I want to see lights all the way down, man. Christmas, my wife makes me drive through Hemby Bridge all the time, and I mean, I said, honey, it was nowhere near it, but no, go through Hemby Bridge because she wants to see it every day.
They're still up.
They're still, some of them are.
Yeah, they cut
But
them
it, you know, it's pretty. It's pretty and it's a Christmas spirit and I like it. So I'll leave that much alone. I really don't have any other questions. I just wanted to say, I thought it was an extremely good presentation.
Thank you.
I thought that, you explained, or everything was explained very well. Before we get done, I think all we have left to do is Captain Hunky to come up and speak for 5 minutes, or whatever you think it takes, a couple of minutes. Come on up.
And then, Mr. Mayor, with the consent of the council, when Captain Hunky is finished, just let me make some closing comments.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Sure,
Good.
sure.
No, I'm good. I don't need that. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. This is my first process doing a budget, and it's been a learning curve for me and a great opportunity to work with several guys in the town and, you know, have an opportunity to talk to several of you guys, and I greatly appreciate it. When I started the process, I pulled the numbers from all our call volumes to the growth to, you know, and I presented it. I don't feel like I need to present that again today, but when I did that, I felt like I had the need for 3 positions. Unfortunately, when I did my homework and was pulling those numbers, my due diligence was too well, and I found out that the 2 positions that I have here today, the grant positions, are not going to be funded after October, and again, even in my due diligence, I found that the county hadn't even been billing the town for those positions in the first place. So I guess I proved my high school teachers wrong. I am good at doing homework. But that being said, that jumped the numbers up to 5, my number of requests. I felt like I justified the 3 and then 5 to kind of meet the needs and to keep our jobs. In talking with several of you guys, there's no doubt in my mind if we had a bottomless bucket of funds, y'all would give me more than I'm asking for. There's no doubt in my mind. So I know it's a tough job on y'all to fill those things, but. We talked about the CSI position. I didn't realize, I know that talking with Mike and talking with some other people about that, kind of floating it around, I never did my due diligence and looked to see, you know, pull the numbers to justify that position because it was, to me, just a topic of conversation. It really wasn't anything that I knew or I felt was a threat. You know, they're recommending pulling that positions, and I didn't bring those numbers. I felt like those numbers were presented last year when y'all approved that position and filled that position. I do ask that I'm not standing up here tonight defending 3 people's jobs, okay? I've asked for 3 new positions, 2, you know, old positions, but please don't make me stand up here and defend and fight for 3 people's jobs. I do ask that. And again, we've had several great conversations across the board with several of you, and I think there is a middle ground. But again, I don't think pulling positions is part of that middle ground. And no matter what you give me or what you take away from me, I promise you, me and my men will give you 100%. If y'all have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
I don't really have a question. I just have a comment to you. It's very important that I think the council and myself and the town is that you guys feel safe in what you do. I think the town feels safe. I think you guys do a great job in making us feel safe. But the one thing I would not want to happen is if you guys didn't feel safe, in other words, if you didn't have enough people to take up, if you needed somebody. And that would be my biggest concern. I did speak with you, and you did tell me you thought that was not a concern, basically, I think, is it that you did not feel safe, so.
Well, and I'll add to that, Mike had mentioned the numbers that we're in the 80 percentile of us answering calls in Indian Trail. That's not because we're answering more calls outside of Indian Trails, because we can't answer the calls we have here now. We're having other officers and even other agencies handle the calls within. That on top of our guys answering 25% more calls, 24% more calls than other officers out in the county. So we put in the work. And, you know, there's nothing safe about this job, but everything that we do, and I do from a leadership perspective and an instructor and everything else, I try to teach the guys to be safe and to provide safety for the community. So, you know, the word safe is kind of hard to define, you know, and I don't say that to make it harder for y'all to make a decision, but I'm going to do everything I can to keep our guys safe and do our job, which is keep the community safe.
After talking to Sheriff Cappy, are you getting by? Are we going to get by with what we are suggesting? Are you going to just get by? You guys, are you going to, just like this past year, evidently you couldn't make all the calls. Are we getting by? Or do we need those additional people?
That's a fair definition. And it's hard for me to define, and I hate to say that because my pride, my ego is way too big to say we're getting by. We're giving 100%. We're going to give 100%. And we're going to win. We're going to fight. Would it be easier if we had a couple more bodies? Yes. Would we provide a better service if we had to the community, if we had some more bodies? And again, I know you guys have a tough decision to make, and I know if y'all had an endless bucket of funds, y'all would give me 30 of them. Just, you know, my big concern is I don't want to have to fight for a man to keep his job. It's one thing to give a new position, it's another thing to defend one. Or to maintain.
So are you suggesting if we have to just do 3 to kind of keep what we have and not add any additional? Is that kind of what you're?
And again, talking with people on the council, you know, the number 3 originally came out in discussions, and that's funding the 2.
Right.
They're already here.
The ball was dropped on our traffic, and I'll take ownership of that. Wearing this uniform, I'll take a little bit of ownership of that. I understand, and that was providing another one, and then it was mentioned cutting our CSI, which was just approved last year. I mean, if the justification isn't there, how was it there last year?
Yes, go ahead, Dennis.
Just a question. Crystal and I and Brandy rode with Captain James last year, and we were talking about the budget for the sheriff's department, and he wanted to add 3 positions last year, and I said, I mean, you know, should, excuse me, I mean, I know that not this council, the council prior had voted in an awful lot of multifamily housing, particularly on Wesley Chapel Stouts Road, and so I asked him, well, do you think we could maybe wait, just give you a little history, and he says, well, I'm retiring, and I really want to leave the place in good shape, and so this is what I'm asking for. So are you saying you want to add 3 more to what we added last year, or? And so the reason I'm asking the question is he felt like he was leaving us in real good shape at the time. And so you don't feel that way now, or are you saying keep it our level where we are now with the 2 grant jobs that we would be retaining, plus, you know, what we added last year?
I think the numbers of adding 3. Again, my original request to add 3 was to get us closer to the numbers that everyone, I hate to say it, everyone that's comparable. You know, my guys are getting run to death. I get the new guys up here because the old guys don't want to come up here and run their butts off. I get the new guys. And they're running their tails off. And I'm going to keep pushing them to do so. My original 3 was to ask to help give those guys a little bit of a reprieve. Find out that we were not funding 2 positions, 2 positions were losing their funding. And I understand that's not my fault, not your fault. We're going to own it together. If 3 was a good number, and again, I've had an opportunity to talk to several of you guys, and 3 was kind of a happy number or middle number, that will give us that much more relief, okay? And that will help us move in the right direction. To me, that'll get us there. And again, we're going to give 100%. I'd made the comments before about, you know, years ago when the numbers were a little more even. You know, we had guys that had an opportunity to get the experience and process their cases and move on to be detectives and supervisors. Now the guys are moving on to slower paced jobs because they're war slap out at a 3-year, 5-year part of their career. And again, it's nobody's fault, but it's something I recognize and I would like to fix. And again, if y'all had a couple extra $1 billion in your pocket, throw it my way. I know you don't. So anywhere we can get closer to that is what I'm shooting for. And again, what I don't want to be standing up here is trying to save 3 people's jobs. That's what I don't want to be doing.
So you're asking for us to cover the 2 grant employees plus the other person that we already had, basically.
And the CSI
And the
that was
CSI.
approved last year. You know, the need was seen last year.
Well, we're gonna do that, right?
Whichever way the council wants
Yes, sir.
I got 32 years in the accounts receivable and collection industry, so I just got to say this. Just because you didn't get the invoice didn't mean you didn't know you owed the money. And I'm going to shut up after that.
Well, just to, in my recollection, nobody's losing their job. Nobody's losing their job. We're gonna fund the 2 deputies that were on the grant deputies, so nobody's gonna lose their job there. We're taking that, and we're also adding 1 more deputy, if I'm not correct. So nobody's losing their job. And, you know, I don't have a vote in this. There's no doubt where my heart lies with the sheriff's department. Always has, always will, and I'll stand up for you. You're heroes in my eyes. Sheriff Cathy is a hero. He ranks right below Dean Smith in my eyes. And I mean that as a compliment because Dean Smith is a hero to me. So we want you to be happy, and we want everybody to be happy, Captain Hunky, and we'll work it out. We'll figure it out. Thank you for coming back up. Is there any other questions? Thank you.
So one of the things I think I'm hearing from the council is what is the consensus on the CSI? Are y'all wanting to add that back in?
Well, let's ask a question. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question, sir?
Go right ahead.
Captain Hunky, what percentage of time is that CSI person assigned to Indian Trail? I know in Indian Trail, violent crime is not really a problem right now. Thank God for you guys and for that being the case. But what percentage of time is that person funded in the town or spends the time in the town? I think a compromise could be had where maybe the sheriff's office covers half the cost, the town covers half the cost. Because I'll be honest with you, if there's a CSI person and there's a crime or something happens in Stallings or some other town and they're available, I would hope that they would go ahead and investigate it because we're all Union County, you know, we're all kind of part of the same thing. But there's a way that I think we can reach the compromise. From what I'm understanding from the presentation here, the 2 traffic deputies we definitely are going to fund. I think that was the manager's recommendation because they've had an impact just on the numbers that you've presented, and then to add another deputy position. So I think that some way to try and find some common ground, but what percentage of time does that person really spend doing things pertaining to Indian Trail? Because the thing is, we are the ones that are going to be covering, when I say we, meaning town of Indian Trail, its residents, 90% of that cost. So we want to make sure that it's money well spent, that they're really serving the town and not, you know, other areas, if you understand what I mean. But if they have to, we want to make sure they do, but you kind of get where I'm coming from.
Yes, sir, I do. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't have any numbers. I didn't bring any numbers because I know it was discussed before, but I didn't know it was actually going to be presented to have him replaced.
That's a fair statement.
And, you know, my other defense on that too was that it was approved last year. You know, not a whole lot's changed in less than 365 days.
Correct.
He is, right now, Chris McTeague is y'all's CSI. He lives here in Indian Trail. His office is right behind mine. And he spends majority of his time here working. One of his big things is electronics, but he does a lot of stuff there. I can't tell you how much of his time has actually worked on Indian Trail cases versus outside of that. But, you know, the fact that he's here stationed in Indian Trail, his response time is that much quicker. And you say our violent crime is lower, and that's not their biggest thing. Their biggest thing is property crimes. When he can get out there and process 10 cars that are broken into, and we can find, you know, who broke into those cars, versus waiting on someone else to come on, waiting for someone else to get checked on, that kind of stuff. So his presence does help us out. And I wish I had the numbers for you, but I didn't come prepared, sir.
So, sorry about that, but when you get them, I'd like to see them. You ask what has changed. The thing is, it's not a zero-sum game, right? The cost from the sheriff from when I first came on here was 2 million something. It's up to 4 now. We do have to watch those costs, but we don't want to compromise when it comes to safety, right? Public safety, it's really important for the citizens. But in terms of the change, last year we added 3, the year before we added 2. This year we're asking for, I think you initially asked for 5, including the 2 deputies that we're rolling off. So it's a significant in terms of the numbers that we're asking about. And we have to be good stewards of the people's money asking those questions. It doesn't mean that we have any lesser value of the public safety. That's something that I'll be honest with you, I feel very safe in the town. Just the presence of you and your officers in town makes me very safe. So it's something that I just, want to mention. But if you can provide that information, that can help us crystallize that idea and come to that decision.
I will definitely work on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would the council be interested in having us go back and work with the sheriff's office to see if we could come up with a partial funding formula that everybody agrees on?
Can I say something too, or may I say something? I will, thank you. One of the things too is in Captain Huntley, I know you understand this, and what the town looks at too is we do pay taxes also. I mean, the town pays taxes for the sheriff's department or for our deputies on top of what we already do. I think, by the way, and I'm just guessing the way Mike got up and approached it when he stood up there, and I'm again guessing, would it be a good, and I can't make this compromise, but I could ask, I know what you're asking for, but if you had the CSI and the, and your 2, the 2 funded deputies and 1 more, would that be a happy medium and a happy compromise for everybody? Or and I know I'm overstepping, but I kind of had a feeling that that's kind of what you were thinking. Would that be a pretty good compromise for you?
I definitely think that's moving in the right direction.
Well, I'm just trying to get it moved in a really good direction, and we don't have to, and I don't know that you guys would want to do that, but I think it's a good compromise.
I know that the Mayor Pro Tem has a question, but if you don't mind, sir, what was your suggestion, sir?
Was the 2 grant
Okay.
and the officer and the CSI.
Okay.
I think that's a slight it is, I think, a good compromise, but I wanted to ask, and I wanted to ask council. Go ahead.
Well, I think, we start with, we fund the 2 grants, we add the deputy, and we keep the CSI. That's what you're saying,
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
I'm good with starting there, yeah.
Can I get a nod of the heads or no? Yes, no, or I think it's a compromise, and I mean, is that okay? Did I overstep my boundaries?
We will give you as much government as you're willing to pay for, sir. So
Okay, well,
if it's a priority for the
I kind of thought it
council,
was
we'll
going
find
that
the
way
money.
anyway, and I was just, All right, let's,
Okay.
Mr. Gay.
I just want to make, one comment, is that the Sheriff's Department does an excellent job, and we, in the past, there's always been somebody coming along wanting a Sheriff's Department here, and I don't think that any of us, not a Sheriff's Department, but a police department, and there's an awful lot of expenses that go into having to set up a police department, like a crime area and that sort of thing, and so there'll be somebody sometime in the future coming in wanting us to have a police department. And so when we look at the numbers, in a lot of respects, we're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen, because I think that the most cost-effective thing for us is the sheriff's department. So, so when we ask you these questions, we always have that in the back of our mind, that we got to defend what we do to some people coming in wanting to change it. And so, but y'all are doing a great job, and so thanks for answering our questions, and we want to keep everybody safe. So
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
my friend. We do.
Mr. Mayor, before I give any closing comments, I know that Mayor Pro Tem Barber I think you had some questions about ARPA or surplus revenue. We don't have an ARPA item on tonight's agenda. I had forgotten about that and was reminded by a
What we had
text.
here was a suggestion of 2 million one fiscal year for community senior center and 2 million the next year for community senior center, correct?
And that's what the proposal is. It's just kind of trying to gauge your interest in it.
Couple questions. First question is, can that money be used for services? I mean, the state allows broad spectrum for municipalities that work with seniors.
Yeah.
We don't really have any senior programs, but can that money be used to fund senior programs?
That money is basically your money, and I'm gonna ask Adam to step up here in case I mess up your answer.
I mean, you can answer that later or
Okay.
whatever, or something we can
That's
work
fine.
towards, because you want like partnerships with council on aging or something to be put into this, correct?
Right, and I have seen facilities where the county and the city have come together to provide that as a service.
My next thing is if you're gonna do 4 million, one of our big needs is, and we did the study where the roads came back, a lot of them in poor shape, so we've done the repaving program. And then Mr. Huntsinger presented taking over some roads. So rather I'd see, if you got 4 million, I'd like to see 2 million to the community center, and I'd like to see 2 million go to roads. I mean, let's speed up the process. I mean, I know people in Chrismar and, you know, Sandalwood and a lot of places. What he proposed is, I know a lot of people are looking for infrastructure improvement. So I'm kind of looking at using that for 2 things as opposed to just one. Since you're gonna have to spread out the cost of the community center anyway, we can, maybe go ahead and speed up on some of these roads and repair and taking them over.
All right, let's look,
I think a lot of people will be interested in that.
okay. Adam, do you have any thoughts?
So your first question about senior programs or things that we offer. So through Park and Rec, Hayden and them do offer plenty of things for seniors here in the building, or they go on field trips, different things. But if you're talking about from the side of medical type things or things like that, we don't offer that, and that's not a town function, that's a county function. So that's not something that we are allowed to spend funds on. We would have to work that through the county.
We might be talking 2 different things. Well, state law allows municipalities a lot of different leeway. So, like if we have the van, you know, maybe we're working with Union Transportation or making sure older people get to the doctor or whatever. But maybe we're working with Council on Aging and having someone from Council on Aging maybe be stationed here at Town Hall or something, you know, and that came from someone with Council on Aging type suggestion. So I was just wondering if that's possible, something to look into. I'm not saying it's something we gotta decide. I just say with the pup here, when you said partnerships, that's what I was thinking.
It would have to be an agreement that we would have with the county that we would then partner with them to offer those services. It's, in Union County, they do those services, we don't, so it's not something that we have the ability to do right now with those dollars.
In other words, we don't wanna duplicate the service.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, you answered my
Kind of like we're doing with water lines with the county.
Right, yes, sir.
Okay.
You know,
All
one
right.
thing, I wish we would stop calling it a senior citizen center, because just because people came in that were seniors requesting a building, that doesn't mean it's going to be just for seniors. This is a community center for all ages that we're talking about.
Yes.
Yes, that's why we have the slide the way we do.
That's right.
Mike, go ahead. If
All
you
right,
would,
let
do
me
your
wrap
closing
up,
comment.
if I might. Hey, Merle. All right, I certainly appreciate everybody's questions. And, you know, we've made a lot of changes in the budget this year, both from going from paper-based to computer system, and your finance department helped shepherd that through. The staff has been very good in meeting the deadlines and stuff like that. Your interest has been greatly appreciated. I can't thank the staff enough for their hard work and diligence in making this happen. Our next step is on May 9th. You will have a book, you will have a presentation, and we move forward there. If there's not any more questions, I'm finished for
Very good.
tonight.
Thank you very much. Very good presentation. And I'd just like to thank, too, all staff that are here tonight. I know Mike did this not by himself, but with this great staff that we have here. Thank you very much for all you do. And We got, what, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, so I'll see you back in 12 minutes. We'll get started. Beg your pardon? Oh, can I get a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Unanimous.